Hi, and welcome to the next phase of the prenatal Feldenkrais series called Pelvis 101. So, as we are all well aware, our pelvis goes through a lot of changes during pregnancy, especially in the third trimester as the ligaments begin to soften and prepare our bodies for birth. It is in this time of our lives, as the pelvis and our bodies as a whole are constantly changing, that we are likely the most unaware of our pelvis and its ability to provide a strong base of support for our spines. It may be counterintuitive, but although our pelvis is gaining the ability to open and shift for ease of delivery, it can also have the tendency to seize up and decrease its available movement in our daily tasks leading up to birth. You may have experienced this kind of pelvic joint pain of immobility after sitting for too long. And this is where the Feldenkrais method comes in. In today's session, we will be starting with a quick anatomy lesson and begin to increase our own internal awareness of the pelvis. We will then explore how it can move in an integrated way with the rest of our spines. This will help to decrease postural pain and improve our general function and power throughout the day. If we are disconnected from the powerhouse that is our pelvis, we will be at a disadvantage in the delivery room. One thing I do want to point out is that we'll be solely discussing the skeletal structure of the pelvis and spine in this lesson. I know we're all familiar with the idea of the pelvic floor, muscles, and how they support us during labor and delivery. And while that's an integral piece of the puzzle, it's not what today's class is about. So, a little anatomy lesson. The pelvis is comprised of a collection of large bones at the base of the spine, which houses our uterus and bladder, amongst other organs, and it forms the base of our support in sitting. What we might think of as our hip bones, those pointy bones that jut out in our low abdomen, that's the front part of the wide wing-shaped bones which wrap around our sides, below our waists. They join together in the back at the sacrum, or the base of the spine, and they join together in the front to form the pubic bone. The other connection between the front pubic bone and the sacrum happens underneath as the two sit bones. Today we'll become more familiar with these sit bones and how they provide us with support and mobility in sitting. So go ahead, sitting in your chair. You want to have a solid seat, not a bucket seat or a swivel chair here. Just a nice standard chair like a dining chair. Come sit at the edge of your chair, feet flat on the floor. Do your best to have your knees and hips level. If you have short legs, you might want to raise the floor up to meet your feet by placing some books or pad or something underneath your feet so you have contact. Or if you have long legs, you may want to raise the seat up so that you may want to sit on a pad or something on top of the chair seat. So when you're there at the edge of the chair, close your eyes. Be present. Settling your weight in the chair. Check in with your breathing. Just see how you settled in here. Where are the places of tension or effort left in your posture? Can you find a little softness somewhere? I'm going to check in with those sit bones, making contact with the chair. Do you perceive that they have the same amount of pressure underneath them? So we're going to become more familiar with your specific sit bone. We're all built differently. You're going to take your right hand and place it palm up underneath your right sit bone. So you're sandwiching your hand between the seat and your bottom. Just find a comfortable spot for that. Shift your weight around gently. So you're rolling your pelvis around, kind of like a mortar and pestle if you think about that image of your hand being the bowl there. Just shifting gently, getting a mental image. How big is that contact area? The boundaries of that sit bone. How close is it to your midline? And then you can remove your hand. Do the same thing with the left side. Just rolling that pelvis around, getting a sense of that left sit bone, its size and shape. And then remove your hand. You might notice that your both sit bones are lit up a bit more in your awareness. Good. With your hands just anywhere on your knees or on the side of the chair, comfortably leave your feet on the ground. And how can you lift one sit bone up? Then the other one presses down. And then do the other side. Good. So one sit bone lifts up off the seat and the other one presses down. There's multiple ways to do this. Just see how this feels for you. And that's us moving in a side bending plane. And then pause in the middle. And there's other planes. There's the forward and backward plane. You're going to shift your weight forward onto the front of your sit bones and then shift back. And as the same goes for your side bending, there's multiple ways to do this. We will play with the different options here in class and see which one is the most efficient and least straining. So we can go forward and backward, we can go side to side, and then take a break. Good. So we're going to use an image called the pelvic clock. So you're envisioning that you're sitting on a clock face. 12 o'clock is in front of you, 6 o'clock's in back of you. So 3 o'clock would be underneath your right sit bone, and 9 o'clock would be under your left sit bone, more or less, right? Good. So you're going to imagine 12 and 6 on the clock and begin to shift forward and backward on your pelvis in this plane. We're going to keep our spine straight, so that might be different than your habit. Just so we're all doing the same thing to start, you're going to keep your spine straight. You're just going to shift forward to the front of your sit bones to go to 12 o'clock and backward to the back of your sit bones at 6 o'clock a couple times. And then pausing in the middle, imagining the 3 and 9. Going to shift side to side. So once again, the spine stays relatively straight. Going to shift side to side as if you were trying to pitch yourself off the side of the chair. Just kind of like a weeble wobble there. A few times. Feeling the parameters of your sit bones side to side. Now connect the dots. So you're going to roll your pelvis gently around the entire clock face. So start at 12 o'clock. Roll around that arc 12 to 3. Then back 3 to 6. 6 to 9. And around 9 to 12. So starting clockwise, you'll do this a few times. You might find that certain parts of that clock face are a little less clear, or maybe more oval than circle. Just work within your comfort. There's no need to strain. You might make a smaller clock face if you start to come into any discomfort. Make it easy. And now try counterclockwise a few times. So going from 12 to 9, through to 6, around to 3, and back to 12. And as you're doing this next round, notice what your head is doing. Is it following the circle of the pelvis? Just notice. And pause. There isn't a right or wrong way to do this. The point of all of this is to notice your habits, and then in Feldenkrais we offer other options of movement which may or may not feel more comfortable and efficient. So we're going to do the same movement, the different twist. So everyone's still sitting at the edge of this chair. If at any time you need a break, if your back starts to bother you because you're working a little harder than you should maybe, just rest your back on the backrest and take a break, pause the recording, come back when you're ready. So if you are ready, you're going to imagine there's a beam of light shining out from the top of your head. We're going to return to those cardinal directions, that 12 and 6, 3 and 9. You're going to move in such a way that the beam of light draws a line on the ceiling above your head as you shift left and right on your buttocks, 3 and 9 on the clock. So the head mimics the pelvis. The head goes to the left as you shift your weight onto your left buttock, and then right as you shift onto the right buttock. Do that a few times. So we've done this before with some different imagery. And now try this going forward, 12 and 6. So the head light beam goes towards 12 as you tilt the pelvis towards 12, and then shifts back onto your tailbone as the head goes back to 6 o'clock. If you're feeling ready, you can make that circle happen again in your base, in your pelvis. Good. So the light beam circle on the ceiling might be quite large compared with the smaller one that your pelvis is making on your chair, but they're moving in that same direction. So go small enough that you can feel these subtle weight shifts. You don't feel as if you're going to pitch yourself off the edge of the seat. And you can reverse that circle and pause when you've had enough of that. And then imagine before you move in this next series. So we're going back to the cardinal directions. The beam of light from the top of your head draws a line from 3 to 9. But this time the pelvis is shifting its weight from 9 to 3. So the head and the pelvis are moving in opposite directions. So if you allow yourself to soften around the spine and ribs, you might notice one side of your pelvis lifts up, on the side your head is tilted towards. You set that down, shift your weight to the side of your other side of your pelvis while your other side lightens, shortening that side of the body, and your head is now tilted towards. So you're shortening on one side and lengthening on the other. Go back and forth a few times, make it easy. You might find a gentle C shape in your spine, shifting side to side. Keep your feet on the ground. You're not lifting your heel to make this happen. You're going to find that movement somewhere else. So that might be a shortening of your side body, a dropping of that shoulder, softening of the ribs on the side that is lifting. Good. And take a break. So that was 3 and 9 on the clock. And now we'll go for 12 and 6. So starting with the pelvis. The pelvis tilts forward toward 12, but instead of the head also tilting forward to match it, you're going to find a slight arch to your back, allowing for your head to gently point towards 6 behind you. And then as the pelvis rolls back to 6, the spine rounds, your breastbone drops, and the head goes towards 12. So you'll toggle between 12 and 6 a few times, the pelvis and head drawing equal but opposite lines. So the spine is essentially rounding and arching in reaction to your pelvis. You might find that you inhale as you tilt your pelvis towards 12, the belly expands, your breastbone lifts, your eye gaze lifts, your shoulder blades might squeeze a little behind you, and then an exhale, you roll your pelvis back to 6. Do your best with your belly to round your spine, hug the baby close to your spine, dropping your gaze to your lap, rounding your shoulders, dropping your sternum or breastbone on an exhale. So do that a few times and then pause when you're finished with that. And then if you feel ready, we're going to attempt a full circle. So you can play with this on your own, go slowly. You may even want to imagine it first. So you can focus on the pelvis, first making a clockwise circle. And then adding in the head, making a counterclockwise circle at the same time. So your clock face might even be as small as a pocket watch. There's really no need for excessive straining. And so the pelvis is going from 12 to 3 to 6 to 9, back to 12. At that same time, the head passes the center point at 12, but as the pelvis rolls clockwise to 3, the head is going counterclockwise to 9. Good. They'll kind of pass in the midline, and you're rolling to the other side. And then reverse the circle. But keep them going in opposite directions. Check in with your breathing. Notice if you're clenching your hands or your jaw. And rest. It's really not important to be able to do any of these movements perfectly. What we're looking for is ease and grace. It should be pleasurable. If you find that you are fighting or straining, that's your cue to take a break. Maybe imagine the idea of the movement in your head first and then come back to it. So the idea of having a base or a pelvis that's mobile is really important for the comfort and health of your whole spine, your arms, your head, because when you fix your pelvis in place, you have to do a lot more work of the musculature up above it. Okay, so we're going to bring this into a daily function, because as a physical therapist, we got to bring it into functional daily tasks. So sit here at the edge of the seat. You're going to take your dominant arm out to the side. Lengthen as if you wanted to reach for something out there. Bring your eyes to your hand, because if we reach for something, we're typically looking where we're reaching. So imagine you're in your office, or you're reaching across the table for your kid, maybe even reaching back behind you, like reaching for your kid in the back seat of the car. So you're just going to reach your arm in different ways, at different angles, out to the side. Imagine there's a big sphere in front of you. Good. And that your base can help with this reaching. See if you can do it in an enjoyable and smooth way. You reach and your pelvis is rocking with you. And all the different planes that we've played with. Forward, sideways, back. And then pause in the middle. Now let's experiment with the other arm. Other arm's going to reach out to the side, but let's pretend that we have a pelvis that does not move, a frozen pelvis. So you're going to reach for something, but the pelvis is not going to help shift, and see what that's like. See how much effort it takes just to have your arm up there against gravity. And now allow your pelvis to move, your arm side to side, reaching different directions, and see how much easier that is. Reaching can be pleasurable. It's a nice reminder during the day to keep yourself mobile. And then just rest here. Maybe eyes closed. Observe now your comfort in sitting, how your shoulders rest, the length of your spine, maybe even the back of your head. If there's any differences from the beginning, 20 minutes ago when we started. Good. You can open your eyes. You can also do this whole pelvic clock series or portions of it seated on the floor with your legs lazily crossed in front of you. Usually helps to have your pelvis propped up on something like a yoga block or a pretty solid pillow or a folded blanket. So if you're curious, come down to the floor and return to those pelvic circles. Really allowing your spine to passively round and arch, side bend and soften, to guide the head in an opposite circle from the pelvis. So we're just returning to those opposite pelvic circles. So this requires much softness in the ribs and spine, the shoulders, the breastbone. And these circles are always led by the power of the pelvis. The rest of you, the spine, the head, just moves by proxy. These powerful pelvic muscles are doing the work. You can switch your legs, reverse directions of your circles. Just see if you can make this pleasurable. Just let it all go. This can be a lovely little movement exercise to reset the spine and remind your body that the powerhouse of the pelvis is available to take the work. It's especially helpful as our bellies begin to pull our weight forward in space. This exercise will allow your spine to stack on top of the pelvis and decrease the amount of work your spinal muscles have to do to hold you upright. And I hope you have a better awareness of your pelvis and how it supports your spine and how it's going to be instrumental in being there for you during your labor and delivery. Thank you.